Good morning, everybody. So if you had told me 10 years ago when I was a student at Guilford that I would be standing here about to celebrate my 1-year anniversary as an entrepreneur and a business owner, I would have told you were absolutely crazy. Nothing in me ever wanted to become a business owner, and here I am about to celebrate 1 year in business. And so my talk today is going to be sharing my story with you of how I became a business owner, the story of how I got there, and also the 3 biggest lessons I learned in my first year. So chapter 1, the first leap. After Guilford, I moved to the West Coast. I moved to San Francisco and then Portland, Oregon. And I found an incredible company called Inside Track that does coaching and consulting with colleges and universities. And so I learned to be a coach from the ground up. Fell in love with this profession. I had no idea that this profession ever existed. And I thought, I'm going to be a coach till the day I die. I'm going to work for this great company forever and ever and ever. And I was there for the better part of a decade. I moved up at that company. I worked my way up from a coach to a campus director, which is essentially like a director of operations for the company, started managing multiple campus accounts. And then my wife and I decided that we wanted to move to North Carolina to be closer to family when we started a family of our own. And Inside Track at that point was not at a place to allow remote work. So I made the decision to leave a company and a job that I was very comfortable at, that I loved with a passion, and take the leap to be closer to family. So when I got here without a job, Megan didn't have a job, we were just going on faith that things would work out. We got here and I got a job that I thought I was going to love. I was a professional development counselor at a trade school in Chapel Hill, and I thought I would be able to do a lot of the same work that I did at Inside Track, but with students in person. So I was really, really excited about this job. And it turns out, this illustrates it perfectly, it was a really bad job. I'd never had a job that I disliked, ever. And I would wake up sick every morning thinking about going into work. I had no autonomy, I had no flexibility. The folks who were over me really liked their power and they liked to hold on to it, and didn't want to use my experience or my expertise. And so I spent 5 months in a role figuring out how to get out, figuring out how to do something that I was passionate about and something that I loved. And so then this day happened. One of my former clients had started a consulting group, and she came to Chapel Hill for a family wedding, and she asked to have lunch with me. And so we had lunch at Mediterranean Deli on Franklin Street, and we sat there talking, and I told her how much I hated the job I was in. And she said, I actually have a contract that's starting. Do you want to take the leap into consulting? And I went, okay, let's talk about it. So we talked about the pros and cons of leaving a job I hated and starting to work as a consultant and independent contractor, which was something I had never, ever, ever thought of. But she had this project that was going to use my skill sets and my experience, and I'd be able to work from home, have a flexible schedule, work on a really interesting project. And so I went back into the bathroom of the small school that I worked at, and I hid in the stall, and I called my wife and I said, are we gonna do this? Like, should I do this really brave and scary thing? And she said, yeah, you hate it where you are, let's do it. So I decided to jump. At that day, at the end of that conversation, before I hid in the bathroom and called Megan, I said, you know, Martha, I'm terrified. And she said, if you leap, the net will appear. If you take a leap away from something you hate and move towards something you love, the net will appear to catch you. And the day that I got home from my last day at the job that I hated, I found out that night as I sat down on my couch that we had a signed contract and I had a year of work ahead of me, which was incredible. Next slide, please. So I worked on that project for the better part of a year. It was about this time last year that I found out that the contract was not going to be renewed. So here we are at my worst fear of having taken this leap into entrepreneurship or into consulting at that point, not having a next gig, not having a next contract, not having a next job. And I thought, do I have to go back into the world of corporate? Do I have to go back to someone else dictating my schedule? Do I have to go back to lunch breaks that are a certain time? Do I have to go back to asking someone for time off to go see my family? And I talked to Megan again, and we decided no. I wasn't ever going back there. I was too in love with the autonomy and the flexibility and the innovation that consulting and independent contracting afforded me. And so I decided to start a business, which is something I never ever thought I would do in a million years. So we do leadership development consulting and change management at the Green Door Group. And I say we, it is me at this point, but hopefully it will be a we at some point. Our mission is to inspire growth and action in seekers of change. I work with business owners, I work with team leaders, I work with brand new leaders who have never led teams before, and I work with companies to change their culture in a really positive direction that makes people never have that experience that I had when I first got here, of that job that I never wanted to wake up and go to. Next slide, please. This is the day I got my first check. It was really exciting. January 17th, I will never forget opening up the mailbox, and oh my God, there was money, and there was a check made out to the Green Door Group LLC, and that was me. And it was a really, really big deal because it showed that something could happen here. Something could happen with this business. So there are 3 huge lessons that I learned this year. Number 1, build and maintain authentic relationships. Number 2, know your numbers. And number 3, say yes as often as possible. So I'll go into each one of these in just a minute. So build and maintain authentic relationships. I have always been a relationship person. I keep in touch with people from years ago, Thalie, Carrie. Relationships are really important to me. And one of the reasons that I felt comfortable going into business is I knew my network was strong. I knew my friends and my family and my colleagues and my clients, that they would support this. In the first year, 92% of my clients came from referrals. Either people who knew me and hired me, or people who passed my name on to someone else who hired me. I took out a $400 one-time ad in the paper, and I got 2 clients. All the rest came from my network, which was a really big deal. Know your numbers. So I'm not a math person. I'm not a huge money person. This was the really challenging side of owning my own business for me. 3 numbers that I realized I had to know. The first number was, what is the baseline income that I have to make every single month to not go into debt? I did not want to go into debt for this business. And so Megan and I sat down, made a spreadsheet, figured out our basic expenses, what we could cut back on. We took out cable, we took out the gym, we took out all the other expenses that we didn't use or didn't need to use. And we knew exactly the baseline that we had to come in at to not go into debt between our incomes. The second number that I needed to know was, what was my monthly income? How many clients did I have? What were they paying me? I tracked it all in a spreadsheet, and man, this was scary, right? I said terrifying and exhilarating. The terrifying part of this year has been that I've made less money this year than I've ever made in my entire life, in my entire working career, but I've been happy and I've been free and flexible, but I knew the numbers. So if I wasn't bringing in enough to get our basic expenses, you know we weren't going to eat out, you know we weren't going to travel. So knowing the numbers was really important. And the third thing that I found out that I needed to know was how much in taxes I needed to save. Because as a business owner, you got to pay your own taxes. Nobody's holding that out of a check for you. And I made several mistakes with that in my first year, and have a great accountant, thank goodness now, who's keeping me on track. And so hopefully year 2 will be a little bit better. Next slide, please. And then say yes. So this is my favorite story to tell about my first year in business. I went up to New York to visit my uncle, who's an entertainment lawyer. He's a very successful entertainment lawyer up there. And I realized I'd never asked him how he got to be a very successful entertainment lawyer in New York. I didn't know his story. And so I said, how did you get to this place in your career? And he said, well, I went to law school, and I was in my very first job, and my boss one day walked in with a client and introduced me as, hey, this is Seth Gelblum. He's our entertainment attorney who handles all of our entertainment cases. And he said, and I had 2 choices at that point. Number 1, I could say to that client, I've never taken an entertainment case in my entire life. Or I could do what I did, which was to say, hi, I'm Seth, nice to meet you. So that's how he got his first entertainment case, was by saying yes, because he knew he could do it. He knew he could figure it out based on the skills and the talents that he had. So thinking about that story, I got a call from my neighbor, right there, this is Morgan, and she said, you do customer service training, don't you? And I've never done one of those before in my life, but I said, yep, I sure do. I do customer service training because I knew that every single piece of my experience had brought me to a place where I could build and run a very successful customer service training. So this is the group that I led in a training that I didn't have prepared before she asked me, but because I said yes, now I have a customer service training to be able to offer to clients. And so saying yes is a huge deal for being in a business and business owner. So one of the things that got me through this year was remembering that every experience is a story to tell later. The good, the bad, the ugly, everything you go through in life, not just as a business owner, is a story to tell. The times you succeeded, great stories to tell. The times you didn't succeed, even better stories to tell. Because then you can say to whoever you're speaking to, yeah, I screwed that up too, and here's how I got past it, or here's how I changed it. You're not alone, I've been through this before. So collect your stories, do brave and crazy things, and that is my experience my first year.